referral rate for special ed of black boys. And they talk about all these different issues in terms of the things that affect our children academically, socially, and emotionally, but they do not speak to black educators who come from the same community, have had to overcome trauma, and are most qualified to represent the experience of black children on a whole. And so the vision that I represent is a vision of us asserting the value of us as black educators in this space to work on behalf of our black children. We were talking about the return to school and the fear that's associated with that. And I love the point that you made in terms of that we have to kind of remove the myth of fearlessness and kind of embrace the fact that fear does exist. But there's a deeper fear that we have to begin to acknowledge specifically as black educators. And that is our fear to speak truth to power. Our fear to challenge those who are in positions of leadership on the city level, state level, the national level, who are putting our children in harm's way, who are also putting us as educators in harm's way. So we got to begin to challenge that fear, acknowledge it first, but then challenge it, and then press to bring some real systemic change. We've talked about George Floyd. We've talked about Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and now, unfortunately, no relation, but Jacob Blake. And every time these conversations come up, we talk about systemic racism, and we touch on the school system. We touch on, we got to have better education. It's kind of outlined as part of a greater social engineering issue. However, we don't do the deep dive as to what's really impacting us as black educators and what's really impacting our children. And I would go to say that the systemic racism that exists within the police department is the same systemic racism that exists within the school system. And so we have to begin to challenge that systemic racism. This rush to go back to school, these reports regarding 70-something percent, 74% of parents are saying that they're going to return their children to school, do not take into account the social reality that is present when you look at those numbers. What do I mean by that? Well, 75% of the children in New York City schools are black and brown. So that reality coming out of Brooklyn, parts of the Bronx, Queens, Harlem, you're taking parents who have to make a decision between, do I send my child to school, which is a dangerous situation by putting them in harm because we really don't know all there is to know about COVID-19, or do I put food on the table? Do I send them to school, and if I keep them at home, who's going to watch them? So then I have to make a decision based upon my economic reality. So of course, 70-something% of the parents are sending their children back to school. They really don't have a choice. They don't have the luxury of, there's an equity issue here. They don't have the luxury of somebody doing a home pod type situation where there's a parent that can stay home and do that. I'm talking about the mass majority of our parents. So that's a real issue. I run a program every Friday called the Parent Teacher Check-In. And I've been advising parents, do not send your children to school the first 2 weeks of school. Just because the school is open doesn't mean your children have to go. Stay back, analyze, assess the data, see if there's going to be a spike. Sit back and watch. All across the country, they're waiting and watching, and they're sending our children into school to see if the spike happens. They're taking the most vulnerable group and sending them into the most unhealthiest of places, because anybody who works in the school knows that schools are incubation for illness, and they're going to sit back and watch. during the time of the flu season. So my recommendation, speaking truth to power, is do not allow the city leaders to use our children as guinea pigs in a social experiment, because this is not a plan. This is a social experiment, and our children and our educators are being used as guinea pigs in that social experiment. So whatever we have to do, I know you've been talking to educators and principals alike about, seeing if they can get some kind of waiver to work at home or what have you. Whatever is in your power to do that, because no one loves you more than you. No one loves our children more than us. I'm talking from an educational standpoint and from a parent standpoint, and we should not be made to be guinea pigs in a social experiment. Lastly, I would like to invite all of you to be a part of our BU Summit, which is coming up. It's our Black Influencers United Summit. I will put the information in the chat. It is a summit of Black educators coming together to talk about three things. 1, academia. 2, consciousness. And 3, economics. How do all these three things play out in the education of our children, and are we properly educating our children about economics, academia, and consciousness? And so we invite you to come and participate in that. In addition, we have, if there are any principals on this line, a very special part of our program will be the VIP vendors pitch. And what that basically is, specifically for those of you who are in New York, but elsewhere as well, is putting Black and brown vendors in touch with Black and brown principals so that we can begin to network and we can begin to know who's out there to provide culturally relevant services for our children. Many of you know you'll get money dropped in your budget and it'll tell you spend it or lose it. And then you spend it, but you really don't know who's on that list. This is an opportunity for us to invite you to meet those people so that we can build generational wealth within our community. So I will drop that as well. And Brother Dennis, I thank you for giving me this time to try to pack a whole bunch of information in.
I appreciate that, Dr. Blake. I put the flyer up on my Instagram. I will continue to cycle it through every day. So I wanted to just ask you before I let you go, and then give some other people an opportunity to talk to you. What I want you to be able to do before you leave is to personalize that conversation. I know you mentioned about parents, and you tell them not to send their children to school for the first week or two, just to kind of check things out first. I need you to personalize that for the people in the room. I need you to personalize that for principals. I need you to personalize that for the educators in the room as well. I think it's a powerful message, but I think what always seems to happen is that leaders in particular seem to leave themselves out of that conversation. So maybe if you could continue to emphasize the importance of that, that'd be great. So if you don't mind just personalizing that conversation, that comment.
Well, in a sense of, for myself, I can talk specifically for myself that I have set up a situation where I've organized. So my work is, I work with principals, I work with schools. I'm an educational consultant, former principal. And so I'm in and out of the schools. I understand the weight, as you spoke about earlier, of sitting in that seat of principal. It's like you walk in every day and you're challenging your fear, especially if you're working in an urban environment where most of us, and when I say us, I'm talking about Black people, when we get into the position of leadership, they usually don't give us the healthy school. They give us the school that comes with challenges and immediately puts us in the role of change agent, whether we want to be a change agent or not. That's the role that we're in. So for me, I've had to reorganize and rethink about how I'm going to engage schools. I have had to think about my own personal, at-risk situation in terms of how am I going to navigate going in and out of schools, or am I going to do it remotely? Am I going to present my PDs in a remote learning platform? because I'm concerned about my health, and I'm concerned about making sure that I don't put myself at risk. I have a son who just went away to North Carolina A&T. Sorry, NCCU is where I went. That's my rival, so I got to think with him about that. But he just went to North Carolina A&T, and we had a long conversation about should he go, should he not go. North Carolina is currently spiking. He's of age where he's ready to leave the house. He's been inside the house during this whole pandemic, and he's ready to, step out and be a young man and experience life. But this is a real reality, so we have to have a lot of conversations. And one of the things that I always suggest, regardless of what your decision is to get information, ask questions, and then once you get the information, ask more questions. And that's what I had to do to get some level of comfort about him making that move. And I still, with all of that, worry. So it's a constant check-in, it's a constant engagement just as a parent. So that's how this impacts me on a personal level.
But here's what I want you to tell them, though, Dr. Blake. Talk to the principal. Talk directly to the principal and tell them what are some suggestions. Give them one suggestion that they can do for themselves the first week or two of school to make sure that they stay safe. One thing.
The one thing you can do to make sure that you stay safe is not go in. I mean, that's because I only paused on that because there is no other surefire proof that you are safe when you walk into that building. So the one thing that you can do is stay home. And I know that sounds crazy, because you got a system telling you that you have to go in. But this is a matter of, it's a hell of a choice, but it's a matter of life, your life, living, putting yourself at risk, and your commitment to your students. And that is a social, emotional, traumatic decision that a school leader would have to make. But I would say that stay home. Wait like the parents are waiting. And let me just say this to you. Have you ever seen, and this is to everybody, the commercial, the Emblem Health commercial? Yeah, I keep on preaching this. The Emblem Health commercial, there's always this commercial where it's like an older man and he's like, I used to take care of my daughter, but now, ever since I've gotten a certain age, they pay her to take care of me. So, principals, you know that in the beginning of each year, monies come to your school that are attached to those students, right? Pupil per expenditure dollars that go with the student. The question I have is, why are we not thinking outside of the box? If they can pay someone to take care of their elderly person, why can't we look at who's in our community that could be paid and then take that same money and resources, place it there, and allow them to educate them in areas that are not crowded? When we know that we got 33, sometimes 40 students in one class on a regular day. So my whole thing is that we have to start to begin to think outside the box. We have to advocate. We have to push. But bottom line, brother, I wish I could say, you can do this, put your mask on, do this, you can do that. Stay home.
There you go. You know what? But if you decide to go on, hey, Kyle, you in here, Kyle Brown? I want you to take one of these with you, Dr. Blake. Hey,
yes,
Kyle.
I'm right here.
All right, so, we talked last week, some people weren't here. So you want to let us know how you protecting yourself over there? I know you ain't going back. I know you're not going back because you in Newark. But I want everybody to take a look at how my man was about to go back into school.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's how he was going to do it.
Hey, the military, they have their shields and everything to protect themselves. We have to have ours, a face mask and a shield if I had to be here.
Absolutely.
Well, again,
That's how I was coming back too.
who's
That's
that?
how I was coming back too. That's Sakina.
Sakina, that's
Wow.
wow. Because Sakina's also out Newark. She's out there in Newark.
We got a donation of 256 pieces of this from the Jersey City Rapid Response Maker Group. We were featured on Inside Edition. They played our district out. It was like a 15-second clip. But anyway, they featured Chancellor yesterday. But this is how we coming back to.
That's what's up. Hey, Dr. Blake, man, I know you got to go, brother. Thank you so much for coming. You know, you and I got plenty of work to get done together. We got there's an event that I want to plan in the next week with you and a couple of your folks, David Banks and a few other people. So we're gonna do some real big things together, man. Thank you so much.
I wish I could stay longer, brother. Thank you so much for having me. I came in last week. I will be on these calls, just taking notes and being a student of all the knowledge that is in this room.
Brother, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No, sir, you cannot be a student because Dennis will absolutely call you out.
Right.
And you know, the same way he's calling everybody else out, there's a lot that all of us can learn from you. So we appreciate the fact that you were able to come on today. And then, you know, I know that you said you got a role, but I saw that you put the link in for the summit. Can you just quickly, in 1 minute, talk about the summit and then go?
Sure. So this summit, let me just tell you why I'm so excited about the summit. The summit really is the brainchild of a young lady within our organization called Courtney Johnson. She got together with a group of young millennial educators around the time that everything was happening with George Floyd and the protests, and it just ignited them to want to do something on the educational front. And they came to us and said, look, this is what we want to do. And I felt like, you know, when our young educators step up to the plate like that, we're duty bound to support them. I remember when I was, you know, younger, my big thing was the Million Man March. And I was instrumental in organizing that. That was my moment. And I feel like this is the moment, you know, to confront this disease of police brutality and systemic racism within our school. This is their moment. So again, the BU Summit, the goal is really to invite those to come get involved with us in our work, to organize around 4 different committees. One is advocacy. We're going to advocate for specific policies. 2 is a policy committee. 3 is a capacity professional development arm of what we're doing. And lastly, we want to create a culture and community committee to revolutionize how we interact with each other as educators to parents, and vice versa. And all are invited. It's not like just educators. That's why we call Black Edfluencers, because anybody who wants to have influence in the educational space is invited to join us and truly unite around a collective voice. You know, I could be out there talking, Simone could be talking, Dennis, whomever. That's great. You know, we need those individual voices, but the power of a collective voice, the united voice, is what we're attempting to do. So our summit is on September 1st, and then we double back on September 3rd. It's not a conference in the sense that you think. It is really, there'll be presentations and panels, there'll be discussions, there'll be breakout rooms, there'll be strategy sessions, and then there will be a plan coming out of that we're going to launch in January. So we're very excited about the summit. We welcome you guys to join. I'm going to try to put that link in before I leave about the VIP pitch.
Yes, about the vendors. There was
Can
something about vendors of Black vendors, correct?
the OSG network cover it?
Excuse me?
Can the OSG network cover it and show it on their platform?
We would love to. Yes, absolutely.
With Dame Dash Studios?
I don't know how we can. I don't know how that would work, but
So
get with me. Let's do it.
Yeah, tomorrow you and I are going to talk anyway. So what I'll do is I'll bring Dame in my conversation with us, and we'll make that happen.
And
It sounds-
And you can highlight that on Dame Dash Studios so that we can ensure that, because Black Influencers is not, of course, you know, limited to New York. That's across right now the nation, and then soon the Globe. So anything that you're able to support through that so that we can streamline it and work through it through your network is greatly appreciated.
And before you go, Brother Shango, Dr. Malik, small pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure, brother.
A big
To
fan
meet
of
you.
you. I want to say to my OSG family, I'm actually one of the keynote speakers at the summit. So everybody got to be there. I'll be a keynote on the 3rd. So we'll definitely be politicking, Brother Shango. And it's a pleasure to meet you virtually.
Yes, sir. I didn't even know you were on here, man. We're really looking forward to what you're going to have to offer. And thank you for participating. And to Brother Dame Dash, I just want to say I'm a fan of you, brother, not just of your artistry, but your message about economics and being a boss. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to revolutionize the way schools work up and to the point where we begin to start thinking about the idea of developing our own schools. Because that's where we have to go if we're really going to produce children who are going to be able to go out there and be develop their own businesses and programs like that. And I know you're a big proponent of that. So I'm just happy to be in the room with you guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again, brother. You can run off to your meeting, man. We'll talk tomorrow, all right?
Yes, sir. All right.
My pleasure, brother.
All right, peace.
So, Simone, my co-host, we got a special guest in the room. It's only right that you introduce this person. You know, everybody loves her, you know, so, and I don't think I can do her any justice because she don't ever believe me when I say how awesome she is. So I'm gonna let you say, maybe she believe you.
So, of course, everybody can hear me, correct? So, let's just talk about this fabulous woman, also known as the incomparable Mayor Shawn Patterson Howard. And there's not too many words that I can use to just describe Mayor Shawn Patterson Howard. Of course, we know, just like the vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, Mayor Patterson is also a graduate of Howard University. Mayor Patterson has also been known for all of her work with HIV, AIDS, criminal justice, and of course, education. Now, like me, she's a connector. That means we may not know all the answers, but we bring everybody together to ensure that we make the answers into solutions. So I don't want to go on and on. I just want to ensure that I am at the utmost level of respect when I say welcome again, Mayor Patterson, because we are so excited to have you. Of course, we would love for you to join every week, but we have to be respectful of the city of Mount Vernon because they absolutely, the constituents have.
They can give her a lunch break. She can come hang out with us on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. Don't
Again.
let that easy, Simone.
So again, while we would love for her to come on every Thursday, because this is how you do it, I know how to do it. We definitely acknowledge that your work is first and foremost to the citizens of Mount Vernon. So while we would love to have you on more than just Thursday, I yield to the work that you're absolutely doing phenomenally in Mount Vernon. So it is without further ado.
Tell them what you're doing down there.
Oh, we're definitely going to lift up our voices for justice, for police reform, for them to stop killing our black men, our black women, our black babies. You know, we're not dogs out in the street. I got in trouble from my pastor this morning because my Facebook post was something about, you know, oh, so the 17-year-old is a trouble kid. And I'm a minister, but I did put on my page GTFOH. My pastor texted me like, really? But you know, I was feeling what I was feeling. So I had to amend it after about 5-6 hours, but it had already gotten some hits by then. But you know, definitely we're going down here. We're here to talk about justice. We're here to talk about what's right. We're here to talk about the value of black lives. We are here to unapologetically lift up our voices and let them know that it is not okay to kill us. It is not okay to treat us differently. That black people saying that Black Lives Matter is not unpatriotic, that as African Americans, we are the most patriotic people in the country, because that red, black, and green flag that I represent and that I fly with the stars and stripes, with red, black, and green, that red is for the blood that we have shed in every single war in the United States, defending the United States' honor, and it is time for our red blood to stop rolling down the streets because of cops killing us, or even us killing us. But we're here to talk about cops. We're going to have to learn how to love ourselves. But right now, we are here to say the cops cannot continue to kill us with disregard. We're not dogs. We're not animals. That's what we're going to talk about. In Mount Vernon, we are reforming our police department. We have a Black commissioner. The first time in the history of Mount Vernon, we have a Hispanic deputy commissioner. We just hired a civilian, Jennifer Lackard, who's worked in social justice, criminal justice reform for over 10, 15 years. She is our deputy commissioner also. So she's a deputy commissioner in the police department. And we have Jay, who is a white male, who is our chief of police, and a deputy chief of police who is African American. So I don't think anywhere in this country you're going to find a white, black, Spanish, and a woman that's leading the police department. And we are putting together a whole mental health, a mental health network to work with us in the police department. 21st Century Policing, we are adopting fully, not just for the mental health of the community, but the mental health of our police department. When I came in January, by February, our commissioner had revised our use of force and our policies, and we're doing training and retraining and onboarding of our police department, where we know that we do have some bad apples, and we were the ones who stood up and demanded that the DA prosecute the police that we had put before the district attorney, that those police officers who abused people in our community, we were the ones who had to lift up our voice as the commissioner and the mayor and push for our DA to prosecute them, because he didn't want to do it. We said we're tired of people just sitting there and putting them on suspension and desk duty or even firing them. We said the same energy, that same energy that the district attorney uses to prosecute and to overcharge people in our community, we needed him to use that same energy to help us get rid of, not just get rid of bad cops, but to prosecute bad cops. And I think we said it so loud and for so long that he lost his primary to become DA again to get a second term. He only got about 30-something% of the vote. So, we're not apologetic, we're not playing. Do we still have challenges in our police department? Yes. Are we dealing with the challenges in our police department? Yes. We also have some incredible officers in our department, and so we're going to continue to lift them up. But, we can't talk about what other people do until we make sure that our house is right, and that's what we're doing. It's not going to be overnight. Other mayors around the country that are doing the same thing, and Mount Vernon is just committed to being the change that we talk about and that we're going down here to protest about.
Well, Mayor Patterson, just really quick, I've been discussing with the principals the fallacy of fearlessness, and that we lead, we take on these roles as leaders, and we've been told we should be fearless and we should go in and solve all the problems, and we should deal with all the melee and the chaos in our buildings. And during this time of this pandemic, you have principals in the room who are struggling. They're struggling with the thought of going back into the New York City public school system or other school systems across the country. And while this pandemic is still a big issue in our communities, do you have any words of encouragement, or do you have any words of advice or recommendations you could give to those that may be struggling with that choice that they have to make about going back into the schools and stuff like that? And I know you as a mayor, every time you're all over, not only Mount Vernon, but you're all over the country. And I know that somewhere in your mind there's always a thought that something bad could happen. Can you just talk really briefly about what that feels like to lead, knowing that there is a potential of something happening?
Absolutely. It is not easy leading in these unprecedented times. You know, people can talk about whether you've been a principal for a day or you've been a principal for 20 years. We have not dealt with what we're dealing with today. You're dealing with national social unrest. So it's kind of feeling like anywhere between 1963 and 1968. We're dealing with a global pandemic that we haven't seen in 100 years. So we have that going on. We're dealing with serious economic decline. So, you know, that's something that is happening. But the mental health and the emotional wellness of the community is at an all-time low because everything in our community is. So if you want to write this down, there's something called VUCA. It talks about the VUCA environment, VUCA. So we're living in an environment now that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that is very difficult to lead in. And so as leaders, we have to make sure that we're educating ourselves, that we're looking at best practices. I know you're working on your school safety plans. You're handing them into the state. You're trying to get them approved. And so as you move forward, if you're choosing to go back to school and you're working with your teachers, your parents, your children to come back to school, we need you to take that uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity and be very honest about it. And based on the information that you have, and that's what I all the time I said, we're in times where the answer we give you today may not be the answer that we're giving you by Monday, because the information is changing. And we can only make the decisions based on the information that we have at this time. And we can be honest with our information is only as valuable as what we know. And each week the story changes. So as leaders, you have to provide vision. So that's to provide vision. You have to provide understanding and help people understand the decisions that are before them and help them to weigh their options. You have to provide clarity in how you move the school year. And then you also have to be agile. You have to be able to be honest enough to say, as we get more information, our decisions and our options might change. So we're going to go from volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous to having vision, providing understanding, and being very honest and authentic about your understanding of the situation, providing clarity as to how you're going to move forward, and at the same time saying that our truth today might be a little bit different tomorrow, so we have to be agile. If more information comes out, if we see that we're having a spike in cases around COVID, then we're going to have to move and we're going to have to change. If we're talking about it, I appreciated what the brother said, because one of the things that I was saying to our superintendent is we want to look at the different churches and the community centers. Those places, all of them have some type of community room. Is there an opportunity to participate and work with these organizations to provide alternatives to classroom participation? Because there is no way that you're going to be able to socially distance, and even if you're bringing half of the kids back to the classroom, there's just no way that you can do it. What I can offer you is I have a friend who is a principal investigator for the New York State Department of Health, and his job, his full-time job right now, is to review the school safety plans that are being sent into the state across New York State. And he can probably come on maybe next Thursday. We can see if we can get him to come on next Thursday and share with you some of the best practices that he's seeing. But even though he can come on and share that, like we said, everything can shift. We're planning for contingencies, and then you have to have contingencies for the contingencies. So this is a moving target, and we have to aim before we shoot. But even if we aim, we might hit the target right now. But as it keeps moving, we have to keep aiming and adjust the way we do it. And I'm not trying to sound politically correct. It just has to be a personal decision for you as to how you're going to move forward. I get up and I go to work each day. We utilize our masks.
Yeah.
I don't do face shields. I go out into the community. We're giving out food to people. We're dealing with big crowds and open spaces and sometimes closed spaces, and I go out kind of armored up with prayer and my mask, and there's days that I'm very, very vigilant, and then there's days that I find myself, because in my office suite, we really not wearing masks within the office suite, and then I'll go out into the hallway and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get my mask, I think because I've been out every day since March, that I guess my anxiety has decreased, but I have to make sure that I don't become sloppy with it, because I'm a big girl. And so obesity and all of that stuff are co-occurring disorders that we don't want to deal with. And I don't want to bring anything home to my family. I've already had COVID. I was an asymptomatic carrier. I had a very minimal symptom somewhere. I have antibodies, but we don't know how long those antibodies. But we do have to be careful. We have to be careful. We have to be realistic. We have to be prayerful. And people have to make the best decisions that they can make for themselves. I wish I had something better than that, but I can't tell you don't go back, because I don't pay your bills and I don't have any place to hire you. And I can't tell you to go back and wear a mask and that's going to be the cure-all for all things, because people get infected with masks each day. So it really is an individual decision, and you have to sit down with your family, colleagues, with your co-workers, with your administrators, and make the best decision that you can for yourself and for your team based on the information you have. It's moving target. I'm so sorry. I wish I could give you something much more definitive.
No, you did. Dr. Small, I know you had something that you wanted to mention.
Dr. Small, proud Mount Vernon resident. I feel bad for the rest of you who don't live in Mount Vernon, because we love it here. But as a principal, which is a job title, but school leader, which is a calling, what is the message that we should be communicating to our parents who are now really partners in the business of education, and they now bear a tremendous burden to now be co-teachers and to now deal with their own children in a way they've never dealt with before? How do we continue to message a message of support and empathy for our parents?
As educators, so I'm going to step back as a parent for a minute, because I was PTA president for my daughter when she was in 7th and 8th grade. And one thing I always said is we have to be to the kids, but we're asking parents to take over education for their children that most of them are not prepared to take over. I have degrees in advanced degrees. My husband has degrees in advanced degrees. And I had meltdowns when my daughter was in 4th. Math, the new math that my mother said we had. So struggled in school. What tools are we providing those parents with? Are we doing Zooms? Are we doing parent universities in the evening and on the weekends? And I know you said asking for this extra work. Well, we're asking the parents to do extra work. As parents, they're supposed to raise their children, but none of us ever believed that we would be tasked or forcibly tasked to educate our children. We thought we'd be able to send them to school. So I think there's great opportunities to kind of do some type of parent university or even mental health check-ins via Zoom and in collaboration with your PTAs and say, how can we as educators and administrators support parents who are struggling, because parents are at home. Even those who are still working from home, they're at home and they're working at the same time that we want them to be working with their children to educate them at home. So how do you really do that? And those of you who are parents, and if you're doing a hybrid program or if you're doing remote teaching and working remotely, how are you going to educate your parents? So I think we just need to have that real human conversation with them and say, this is overwhelming. I'm a parent and I'm here trying to educate kids while trying to make sure that my child is on Zoom for 6 hours a day and they're doing their classwork.
And it's very frustrating and it's very overwhelming. And, you know, if we need to do something twice a week in the evenings to provide support for parents via a Zoom platform, whether it's to help answer questions, help them understand, give them tutorials around how to use some of the online platforms, or just allow them an opportunity to say, I am overwhelmed, I feel woefully unprepared, and I'm really frustrated and confused. Oh my goodness, the people on the highway are bugging out in this traffic.
Because they see the mayor. They see the Honorable Mayor Patterson, so everybody's honking at you.
Oh my, I don't know what they're doing. Did you pull them? Oh, ladies, oh, we have somebody falling asleep on the highway. My God. So, yeah.
Well, Mayor Patterson, we know, I know sometimes you just want to just come on OSG and just sit. You know, but we couldn't allow that this time. We haven't seen you in a couple of months, so we want to make sure that we got some words of wisdom from you, and we appreciate you. You know, please stay on as long as you can. Like I said, moving forward, we'll do our best not to bother you too much with questions and having you talk. We want you to enjoy this, you know, this opportunity to be amongst us and things like that. So thank you so much. You know, we love you. You are honorary member of OSG.
And know that there are times that I also, like it was said by the other one, I want to be the student, because being on here and listening to you as academic leaders, even though the school district is not under my purview, it allows me to hear things from an administrator's standpoint, or, you know, in this setting, and it will allow me to be supportive of administrators in my district, as well as go and have conversations from a different vantage point and with a different understanding with my superintendent. And then as a city, it helps us to understand how our Youth Bureau and our Department of Recreation can partner with schools on a city side. I said when I was running that I wanted to create a culture of education within our city. And, you know, off school grounds and out of school time is just as critical to a child's education as to what they're doing during the school day. So how we are supporting our kids after school hours is going to have a great impact on them. And we really want to make sure that we are reinforcing and we're drilling down and we're providing an extra layer of support, advance and accelerate our commitment to our educators and our.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Mayor Patterson, of course, if you have not already received your honorary OSG shirt, I'm pretty certain that Mr. McKeezy will ensure it is hand delivered.
Yeah, Mr. McKee, I didn't have my hat, my shirt, you know. I'm feeling a little wet.
Don't
to put his hair up in the ponytail.
This will not make us look bad. We want to ensure. And we can have one for you in black and white. We can have one in your sorority colors. We can have one in whatever you want. So Mayor Patterson, please feel free to continue to be here with us. I'm sure that there may be other questions. We do acknowledge that your time is precious, but we absolutely preserve the time that you're here with us. And I think you've already answered some of the questions that I had, because you talked about, you know, promoting the action of what we can do as educators, as well as, you know, our next steps. And so definitely just the duality of the VUCA, and I put that in the chat for everybody. I think just looking at that as both educators as well as parents, because that's something that I can absolutely think about as a parent as well as an educator. So that's a duality of identity that we all, or most of us, share. I thought that that was phenomenal. So thank you for sharing that with us, sis.
Thank you.
So you also happen to mention, and we also have another member here that mentioned that they did have COVID experiences. And from our last meeting that we had, I was one of those people who was on the fence about ensuring my productive health as well as my mental stability around whether or not I was going to put in the request for reasonable accommodations that both of my medical professionals had strongly encouraged and suggested that I do. And as a result of last week's meeting, I did enter the information. I was approved. So on Monday, I will be reporting exactly where I've been reporting since March the 23rd. And I know that we also have another principal that did have that experience as far as having a COVID crisis. So while the majority of our COVID crises have been mental, Mayor Patterson and Dr. Action, the both of you had physical as well as mental COVID crises. And I wanted to know if the two of you were able to kind of share that with us, share those experiences with us to give us some perspective as to where we are as leaders. And so Mayor Patterson still as a leader and still having to lead through that physical crisis. I know you mentioned asymptomatic, but still, I'm sure that there is something else that was residual that might have been mental that could have carried on to create the scenario of what your experience was. And so if you can talk about that a little bit as well as Dr. Action.
Dr. Action, you want to take it first?
You can go first, Mayor Patterson.
No. Go Dr. Action. Go Dr. Action. Nope. She passed the rock to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. First, before I say that, I just want to say thank you, Mayor Patterson, for being on here and being open and sharing. I don't know if you can see the chat, but the chat is blowing up with the fact that every time you get on, you drop jewels. And the last time you were on, you dropped a major jewel for me, and I'm just so appreciative to be in the space with you. And thank you for just what you're doing and representing not only the city of Mount Vernon well, but us as Black women as well too. So thank you for that. You're welcome. So I'm just excited that you're here again. But to Simone's point, yes, unfortunately, I had COVID. I had a horrible COVID experience. So I'll just take it back. Back in March, my grandmother passed away on March 28th, and I was on medical leave when this happened, but she passed away in her home. And so what you would normally do, this is, what you normally would do, and, we went to my grandmother's home to all gather around the fact that she had transitioned. She was still in her home. And so as we were gathering as a family and mourning together as a family, waiting for all of what needs to happen when, someone passes away at home, we were doing all of that. And in the midst of that, what we didn't know is that, my uncle knew, but he didn't really share. My uncle was COVID positive. He didn't share because I think we really didn't have that information as much as we did back in March. And so got tested that Monday. So my grandmother passed on Saturday, got tested on Monday. Of course, the test came back negative. But a few days later, I came down with some very breathing problems. Now, last year, I had pneumonia, so it felt like pneumonia again. And I had an extremely high fever, didn't feel well. If you would speak to my husband said he would be like at least 2 feet or maybe a foot from me, and he could feel the heat radiating off of my body. But I didn't think I had COVID because the test came back negative. So I was like, well, I don't have it. I'm just having another case of pneumonia. And so we went to the hospital, and they kept me in the emergency room, and they took an x-ray of my lungs, and they said, well, we see a little spot, so we're just going to treat you for pneumonia. Still not saying that I was COVID positive.
I'm going to just put it back on it.
At the time. And so sent me home with medication to treat pneumonia. I just thank God that I have a primary care physician who is extremely proficient at her craft. She's extremely knowledgeable, my primary care physician. So when I called my primary care physician and I told her what was going on, she was like, no, that sounds like you have COVID. And she said, you stay quarantined for the next 14 days and we're going to keep in contact with you. Well, during that 14 days, it went from bad to worse. Still didn't know I had COVID. I just was like, oh, she just thinks it sounds like it. It just sounds like symptoms. But it went from my lungs feeling like every time I would take a breath, every time I would breathe in, it felt like someone was lighting a match in my lungs. Like it was on fire. Like if I took in a real deep breath, it felt like my lungs were going to combust and just burst open. And I know I had asthma, so I'm like, this is not an asthma attack, because the asthma attack feels somewhat different. So this just felt like and I've had bronchitis, but it just felt like like it was just all of the dendrites and whatever you want to call them, bronchial tubes. I'm sorry, all the bronchial tubes were just lighting on fire, like just lighting on fire every time I took a breath. And so I knew I couldn't take a deep breath because it was hurting. So I just would lay down and take, little small breaths. I always, make light of it by saying, if you watch the movie Harlem Nights, and he was like, take small breaths. So that's what I would do because I knew I couldn't take these deep breaths. So I went through that and the fever wouldn't break. So this one particular day when the fever was extremely high, I would take some medication and I would get on with my staff. I take the medication because, I'm a principal and I'm leading the charge and I'm being this fearless leader. So I would take the aspirin and the fever would break and I would get on Zoom and be like, hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome, we're here, we're having a great day today and this is what we're gonna do for the kids and this is what we're gonna be and that's how we're gonna lead. And as soon as it would over, I would text my APs, I can't do it. And I would Zoom off and then my APs would lead it and then the fever would come back and I would pop it and I would get back on and I would be the leader that, we say we're going to be or we know that we need to be or our positions require us to be, so we believe. And then one day it was just so bad I couldn't get out the bed and I started hallucinating. I started having severe hallucinations and I thank God that I'm a believer in God and that I've walked with God and I know He is a healer. And in that hallucination, if you ask me, I screamed out for His help. My husband said I ain't saying nothing. My husband said, you were quiet the whole entire time. But I screamed out and was calling on Him because I knew at that moment it was not going to be pretty. And so I called out, and after that happened, the fever broke and I was fine. No more fever after that. Let me not say fine. No more fever after that because the fevers were extremely high. But for the next 3 weeks, I had severe headaches, like somebody was pounding my head. Severe headaches to the point where I was taking ibuprofen, I was taking anything just to get the headache away, take the medication, the headache would go away, and I would come back on Zoom. And I would be like, all right, guys, come back. I mean, just going through this motion of being this leader that I'm going to say me, have created for myself. And then when that was all over, my primary care physician was like, now go get an antibody test so we can make sure, we can see if it was COVID or if it was something else. So when I went to go take the COVID antibody test, yes, it was COVID and I have antibodies in my system. But what I will say is I'm thankful I didn't know that while I was going through it because I probably would have had to struggle like, oh, I'm going to die versus do I have a flu or something else, right? So that was that particular piece. So because I experienced that, and I'm still not 100%. I still have I don't know if you've heard about COVID feet, but there are some times where my nervous system's on the bottom of my feet, I'll get like this reaction and I'll have little red spots on the bottom of my feet and red spots on my hand, and I'll just take an allergy pill and it'll go away, but I can feel it'll be really tingly because they do say that the virus connects to your nervous system and it's trying to latch on, but I believe I'm 100% healed, 100% whole, and that's going to go away too. But I'm very strong and very adamant when I speak to my colleagues and speak to people. If you have an underlying condition, then the best thing that you can do for your school second, the best thing you can do for yourself and your family is stay home, because as I shared with Simone and I shared with my colleagues is that your husband can't get another you, your wife can't get another you, your children can't get another you, but your school can get another principal, your school can get another leader. And we know that people mourn for at least 12 days who really don't know you. But your family members will always mourn, and they will always remember. And they will have that feeling of loss and despair. And my youngest daughter also, because I'm a good leader. Not to say a good leader, but I'm a dedicated leader, and I'm a hands-on leader. And my daughter has seen some of the trials that I've experienced, and she was like, Mommy, I can't wait till you retire, because she's seen how the trials and tribulations I've gone through to turn around a system for Black and brown children. And God forbid I go back in September, and God forbid I catch it, and God forbid I don't make it through this time. My daughter would even hate education even more. So, as I say, my job when I stand before my Creator is not going to be how much my students were like, oh, she's a great leader, she was a great principal. But God is gonna, for me, my God is gonna say, what does your children say about you? Because that was the ministry that God entrusted me with. My two biological daughters and my 2 bonus children. So that's 4 bonus babies. 4 children that God entrusted me with, that I have to be able to stand before my Creator and say, I made decisions because for them. And so, yes, my students that I'm blessed to serve are going to be thankful, but I will do more for them by being alive and well and able to do it remotely than, knowing
Yes,
that
ma'am.
there's a possibility.
Yes,
Knowing
ma'am.
that there's a possibility, because I already went through it. And I experienced it. And so that's my gift to you all. And I was trusted with the trial. I was trusted with the tribulation to share with those who are conflicted or maybe conflicted. I can share my story and hopefully it will impact at least one. And I know it impacted Simone. So if that was one person that was possibly saved, then I'm just grateful that I was trusted with it. But that's my story, and it's nothing to play with. You don't even know if you have underlying conditions. You don't even know if you're asymptomatic. You don't know what could possibly happen if you unfortunately you catch it. But if you have underlying conditions, then you definitely know that you're at risk.
And sometimes we don't even know that we have the underlying
Yes.
conditions unless it hits us, because we have people, again, like Mayor Patterson, who said that she was asymptomatic. And so, Anissa, thank you so much. And again, this is not a conversation that still just ends here. I will absolutely share that when I was texting Anissa and I was speaking to other members of OSG, I kept saying, as I am submitting, but it took me a few minutes before I clicked submit. Anissa reminded me, we have literally been traumatized to believe that all we are supposed to do is sacrifice, and that we are not in a place to take care of ourselves. And so that conditioning of the mind is one that's very real. And so whether we have the physical or the not, or whatever kind of symptoms, even if they didn't show itself as devastating as how Anissa mentioned, it's very real. And one thing that Dennis said to me, I said, oh my goodness, my heart is beating fast and I don't know why I'm breathing, hard. And he said, at least your heart is beating and you are currently breathing. And from that is when I said, click. and just that alone, I had everybody in my life that was saying enough except for me, but I'm grateful for, the support of you guys as well as other people, so that I would really step out of the fear, because we are talking about fearlessness. And how many times have we really heard our fearless leader, our fearless leader? Again, that's the conditioning that we are not supposed to express or even feel any kind of fear. And so, Mayor Patterson, if you could talk a little bit about your journey, because I heard you say you've been out of the house since March. And while you are very intentional about your work, in still being there face to face with the community, you are still a COVID survivor. So can you speak a little bit about that?
It's so interesting because maybe I need to stop using the term athletic, but ecstatic based on what I understood at the time. Later on, because of the very it's about the fevers and the chills and the flu-like and pains and the aches and difficulty breathing. I never experienced that, but I did experience the fire in my chest and in my throat, and I did experience the crippling headaches.
So Mayor Patterson, you might be in a dead spot, but we are absolutely still listening. I don't see if she is still logged on, but hopefully she'll come back on. But what I did hear,
Okay.
there you go, sis. You are back. It's still a little bit low, but you're back.
Okay, so what happened? I crippling headaches, and I had sore throats, burning throat, and some burning in my chest. But I just, attributed it to being tired, to being overwhelmed, and just kind of kept going as we do, because that's what you do when you're a fearless leader. Having worked in public health for many years, I knew that I was taking universal health precautions and making sure that, I wore my mask, because if by chance there was something wrong with me, I didn't want to pass it on to others. But I never felt that I had COVID, because I didn't have the typical symptoms. And so going in and out of work and being around my colleagues, we were careful in those early days because everyone was running around with those N95 masks. But when it came time and the antibody test came out, I wanted everyone around me to get it. It was interesting. I drive around in the car and I'm in close proximity to my security detail. They all came out antibody negative. My husband, my daughters at home, they were all antibody negative. So they didn't get it, but I had it, and I had a high antibody load, which means that I probably had a high viral load when I wasn't experiencing the typical symptoms that we were looking for. One of the things that I did, because I wanted to put a regular face to this, is that I did share on my Facebook page and with the media that I had tested antibody positive. And as soon as I put that out, the Facebook media polls, there are people who don't like me, automatically started saying in Mount Vernon that I had been patient zero and me using out masks, that I had infected, hundreds of people in our community. I was COVID. So, that's kind of just interesting having to deal with that level of ignorance. But I knew that whenever I was interacting with the public, that I was being, careful and doing everything that we knew to do, and that was wash and sanitize your hands, wear a mask, and stay 6 feet away from people. And we practiced that very diligently. But the mental part of it was the worrying, I don't know if I was so stressed out during that time that I just needed to stay busy, because my husband and both of my daughters were at home. They were working at home since the end of February, and my husband and one of my daughters since March. And they really didn't go out except to go to the supermarket or something like that. So I know that if anything came into the house, it was going to come in via me. So I wanted to make sure that I was careful not to hurt my family. Wanted to make sure that in City Hall we had a very skeleton staff. But I definitely still had that superwoman syndrome, that we had to be there. We had to do what we needed to do. And as a leader, it was overwhelming, because we got new vocabulary. These are unprecedented times. We're making decisions based on what we know. Taking extreme cautions. And then the word that came out that really bugged me out was fatality management. when you're in a community and Facebook becomes death book, and you're making phone calls to your staff who are sick at varying degrees, and we even had some people who were on ventilators. Thank God we didn't lose any of the staff in Mount Vernon, but there were people who in the process of doing their jobs did become infected. And so as the leader, I had to call them all the time and check on them to make sure they were okay. But then we had to deal with an inordinate number of deaths in the community. So there was no time to think about myself. And I think my immediate staff, we just all went into crisis mode and tried to take care of our families and our community, because we had bodies laying in refrigerated trucks behind our hospital. All of our morgues were full, and people were having to wait over a month to even have a funeral where you were just doing a drive-by. So, you know, the mental impact of it, I don't even really like to talk about having COVID, because I don't feel like I suffered enough. I feel people went through so much that, you know, who am I who made it through relatively easy, and from what I knew, asymptomatic? How could I complain? And so I really don't think about it, and I think this is the most I've ever spoken about it, because honestly, I think
as women leaders, we have been trained psychologically, and it's nothing against the men, but it's something about being a Black woman and being a leader that we keep going. We keep going as mothers. We keep going as wives. We keep going as significant others. We keep going as leaders. And it's almost like the moment we say, let me just sit down, we feel guilty, because we have been conditioned. The same way how old adage is, we love our sons and raise our girls. We gotta cut it out. So
and I said to my staff the other day, I told them, I said, I am tired. They was like, well, girl, you need to get some rest. I said, no, I'm not sleepy. I'm tired. I'm exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I am exhausted. You know, I'm a minister, but yet we have not been in the church for 6 months. And, you know, Bible says, forsake not the assembly of yourselves together for a reason. It's assembling. It's in that collective worship experience that you do get something different. So yes, we can pray and we can worship at home, but to deal with my stress, church is a place where I get strength. So not having that, not being able to go out to the movies, mall, shopping, spend times with friends, we are quarantine fatigue. And I think that's what you're seeing and what so many are experiencing is quarantine fatigue. And even though our communities are open much more than they were back in March, April, and May, we're still not back to quote unquote what we have experienced as normal. And so yes, that's why people are having big backyard parties and pool parties, because everyone, you know, knows COVID to an extent, but people want their lives back. And so there is this very hard balance between, I want to go on a vacation, I want to go and have our community and our cultural festivals, I want to be able to hang out with our friends, and we want to get back to life as usual, and not knowing if we'll ever get back to life as usual. And so when I talk about that uncertainty and the complexities, and my conversation with my staff, I haven't cussed with the literal words, but very, very strong, is before we had to help people survive COVID, and now as leaders in the city, we are responsible for making sure people don't get infected, because we don't want Mount Vernon to spike in numbers and then the governor shut down our whole region, and people look at our little community and say, yeah, y'all are backwards and y'all are stupid with your Black leaders, you know, and here you are now messing it up for the region. So there's a lot of pressure to be COVID cops and the compliance cops and shut down restaurants and shut down backyard parties and shut down and monitor what churches are doing and what are they doing in restaurants and barbershops and beauty parlors and everything. We're going in there constantly and either shutting people down or warning them, but we can't even take them to court because the courts are closed. So we can threaten people, but we have no opportunity to do enforcement around almost anything. And so there's a lot of stress. And so as you go back to school and every day you're trying to monitor what's going on with teachers And as you see rising numbers in your school, it is going to be overwhelming. It is going to be very difficult. It is going to cause you a lot of sleepless days and nights, not that you haven't already had them, but as you are back into the mix and as things do open up, I want you to really, really be prepared for this level of personal responsibility that you're going to feel, and then the level of responsibility that your teachers, that administrators, that parents, that school district officials, that city officials are going to put on you to make sure that you don't have spikes and get infections in your school. But at the end of the day, we're not in control of any of that, but you feel responsible for all of this.
All the time.
It is overwhelming.
It is in our DNA as women. It's in our DNA.
Not easy.
It's in our DNA from the creation. Adam's first relationship was with God. Eve's first relationship was with Adam. And so her love, her attention, her responsibility, and accountability went to the mate. And that's part of the reason as far as the DNA of how we're made. And you know, I'm looking in the chat to where even people like me nurture, lead, and care more than anyone else can care. So yes, a blessing and a curse. So I just want to just say thank you to you, Mayor Patterson, as well as you, Dr. Action, for sharing those stories, because we do have a number of people that are saying, can we please share the story? This gave me a whole new perspective, which is very important about those of us that have to go back, that may not be, that may not necessarily fall into reasonable accommodations. No matter what city or state that you're in, we have to go back, whether virtually or in person, with a certain perspective where we will no longer be traumatized by fearlessness, and that we have to understand as men and women who have been given the ministry of ensuring that our children are educated and safe, that we have to be okay with not being okay sometimes.
If I could say this, because you deal with another unique experience, and I keep hearing this, and so I want to make sure that we even lift this up. There's so much pressure on administrators and educators to reopen schools, because we know that schools are the safe zone for so many of our children, that home is where the danger is. Sexual abuse, domestic violence, drinking, drugs, unsafe neighborhoods, food insecurity, and that children need to come to school so that they can eat, the mental and emotional wellness of the children. And so there are a lot of people that are really trying to guilt educators and schools into reopening. And then, I mean, forget the summer slide. We've always worried about the 6 to 8 weeks that our kids are out of school during summer. And our kids have been out of school now for 6 months. And so we know that our children already are academically disadvantaged, and that so many of them, the digital divide is very real in our communities. Not all of them have their own devices. They might be sharing devices. They might have a parent that's using their device to be on Facebook. And in some places, they're saying the percentage of children showing up on the virtual learning is 10%. And all of that's really, really true. But you know, you have to find a way to balance the guilt, the pressure, and the reality of what you need to do for you and your family. And everything just has to be considered. Like I said, there's no real answer. But the biggest things that you can do is have the conversations that you're having here and open up, because no one's an expert in something we've never experienced before. And we're trying to figure our way through it, whether we're leaders or not. And I think sometimes people will respect you more when you are very honest and just say, I'm a leader and I'm trying to lead, but I have just as many questions, not more questions, than you do. It's so right and make this decision. And I think if you are just honest like that, then people can respect that.
Yes, I agree. I been having ongoing parent meetings, as we all have been having ongoing parent meetings, and I'm the first to admit, I don't know. We wait for the guidance. But even if we don't know, it's really, we've been in such control so much that we're not yielding to the one who's ultimately in control. And so when people have this loss, this feeling that they cannot control things, all this uber anxiety has been happening. And I'm sure you've seen it amongst, your personal and your professional life the same way that we all have. But, another thing I share is that I'm fine with leaving my unknown life to a known God. So I say that to whomever it is that you serve. But again, your unknown life is just that. We take things minute by minute, step by step, day by day. And ultimately, when you start exercising faith that things will work out in the end, hopefully that will absolutely alleviate some of the anxiety. And then, Anissa, you said I had to call out, whether it was verbally or in the spirit, you had to call out. And that was part of the moment that you recall when you begin to feel better. That's Dennis.
Let me jump in real quick because I think it's also important to understand with leadership, especially as men, we have to make decisions too, And I know recently Dr. Small was also faced with a decision similar to this, and I know that definitely as a man, I think it is a different level of expectation, not necessarily by society, but really by our own belief system. And so, Dr. Small, you also made a decision recently. Could you share that and just talk really about how your fearlessness was tested over this time, Dr. Small?
Right. So when we spoke, I'm guessing a week or two ago, and I was listening to Dr. Riley's story and listening to the rest of my OSG brothers and sisters, I was on the fence. I didn't tell anybody, but I actually got approved to work remotely before any OSG person. I got approved well over a month ago, but even though I got approved, I never considered not going in. It was just never a thought in my mind. I say it publicly as well as privately. I always consider myself a black superhero for my children. And so it's very difficult to consider yourself a superhero, yet also come to terms with the fact that, that sometimes we are affected by health issues and things of that nature. And though in my mind I'm a superhero, I still got some ways to go to make sure that my body kind of measures up to that whole superhero kind of idea and notion. So it was a very, very, very difficult decision for me to make. And I'm still wake up every morning like, you know what, I'm going to go in. But I do trust my advisor, because I think even as a leader, you also have to have advisors and you have to take advice from others. And there's not a single advisor that hasn't advised me to take the advice of my doctor and work remotely. So the decision is very difficult. But fortunately, I have developed, because I've been a principal for some time, a very strong team, a very strong school culture that can really continue to thrive even with my working remotely. And so I've put systems in place to ensure that happens. I even spoke to my technologist earlier this morning. I told him to put a TV at the head of the conference room table, because I'll be there on the screen right in front of my chair. Because I don't want people to get it twisted and think that because I'm not in the building that I don't continue to lead. And so I'm having these conversations with my team. I'm making strategic decisions around who will be the point person for operations and who will be the point person for safety and discipline. And I am taking the advice of the people that I've grown to really trust in such a very short period of time, and people I've grown to really lean on in terms of, we're in a room with some very intelligent, dynamic, powerful people. And it's something new for me to not be the smartest person in the room, because in the room is just incredible educated. And so when OSG said, listen, Small, you got to make some decisions, I really took it to heart. And so I still will continue to lead, albeit remotely, but continue to find ways to ensure that I can do so effectively and strategically in a way that'll ensure that I can survive this, because we do have families, and it's not even really for me. I would feel bad if I brought something home to my household or to my family. At the end of the day, I care about them actually even more than I care about myself, and so it's a very difficult decision to make, especially when you just really enjoy leading, and you really enjoy leading from the front. At least I do, and my lifeblood really are the children in the community that I serve. And so not having the opportunity to physically be connected to that lifeblood is very difficult. But again, I'm going to make a decision that keeps me healthy and keeps me alive, so that when this passes, because this too shall pass, that I can come and be with my children and my families and be with the community and be an even more effective, dynamic, loving leader, because there's so much work to do. And I want to ensure that I'm here physically, God willing, to ensure that that work continues to happen, and that I can continue to be a change agent and an inspiration to the people that I love to serve. So again, I want to thank OSG for really pushing me to do what was right for myself, because we know that leaders are often very selfless, and I never for a moment even thought about myself. And even though I'd gotten approved some time ago to not go in, I never even considered not going in until that conversation that we had with Dr. Riley and a couple of the other OSG family members. So again, I'm grateful and appreciative, and the work continues.
And I appreciate you for sharing that, Dr. Small, because what I want people to leave with today is that you have a choice to make. You know what I'm saying? You got love and support from me and from your OSG family. You know what I mean? It's going to be tough for those who make the decision to go back. It's going to be tough for those who decide to stay home. But I do think that's why we need to stay connected to one another, because just like we got each other through the 13 weeks after the pandemic, after school was canceled, I think we can continue to do that beyond that. And so I truly appreciate people sharing their experiences with this, and but it's really important to reemphasize the importance of doing what you think is best for you and yours. Nobody else should make that decision. No one should be felt, you shouldn't feel a level of guilt to decide to do something that's best for you and your family, whatever that decision is. So you already know, again, OSG is a family, it's a movement, and we're gonna stick with each other regardless of whatever decision you make. If you decide to go back, just be careful, take the proper precautions, do what's right for you and your students. Just keep in mind that things are not going to be anything close to what it was when you saw them the last time. They won't be hugging and kissing and spending the time that most of you did with them, this time. And I know that is the bloodline. I know those are the things. When Small mentioned that, it's so important. I know another principal who's on here, Principal Hall, Chanel Hall. The other day I was looking through my camera roll, and I had spent some time with her and her kids when they were flying drones and stuff like that through the hallway, and playing with robots and stuff like that, and to think that most likely won't happen again. But at least I know for a fact that I know if the opportunity did present itself, that those students would have the opportunity to spend time with their principal as they did prior to this pandemic. So I do, like I said, I encourage you all to do what's best for you, and don't let anybody deter you from making the right decision for yourself, whatever that might be. You know what I mean? So if you can wait it out, wait it out. If you can't, you know what you got to do. Do what you have to do. So I definitely appreciate everybody for sharing that. Obviously, Mayor Patterson's family, and for her to share what she shared is also important. But again, as a crew, as a family, we got to stick close to one another regardless of, circumstances and things like that. So I do encourage you all to continue to, talk to your families, talk to your loved ones, and make the best decision. That's going to help get you through this experience. So leave the last word for anybody who didn't get an opportunity to talk earlier.
Dennis, can I interrupt?
Yeah,
I'm
please.
sorry, because not only do we have school leaders here, we also have district level leaders, and somebody that has also been quiet is our beloved Deputy Davis, who also saw fit to ensure that her fearlessness was to make sure that she too was safe, and so I know that she also has been approved. Fia, you still here? I know that she was traveling
Way back.
when, and of course she's not on, and now she's not on mute talking about I'll call you back. Thank you, Fia. And so, because I know that a lot of us are speaking from a school building leader perspective, it helps because you have a different perspective, albeit, we're so excited that we all got promoted with you July 1. But as the deputy superintendent, who also has made the decision to exercise your right of taking care of yourself and being fearless enough to put in for reasonable accommodations, can you speak to us from that lens as well?
Yes, ma'am. I exhaled hard as I was talking just because, I'm committed to showing up and being excellent and to maximizing this opportunity to serve the children. But, with my medical history, I had to have a serious conversation with my brand new boss and say to her, I'm going to work hard for you and work hard for the children, but my medical history and talking with my doctors and my cardiologists and all kinds of things, I need to make this request. So I actually just put in the formal request because it's different for us and how we submit. I'm awaiting approval, but I want to be able to continue to serve them and be healthy, and so I needed to make a choice. And I learned the hard way that if you don't, in my first week as a teacher or first month or so as a teacher, I got sick. You're not ready for the germs, and I couldn't get out of bed, and I still lived at home, and I might have been 22. And my mom said to me, if you drop dead, I won't get a new daughter, but I promise you there'll be a new English teacher at your school. And so that always stays with me, and it resonates for me, and I needed to make the decision. I will serve and stand for excellence for children, but I will have to do so and make this request for this accommodation to be safe and to make sure that my pre-existing conditions don't, make me vulnerable or worse, and so that I can prevent to the best of my abilities contracting this virus. And so I made that decision, and it was, it required me to pray and reflect.
That takes a lot of courage, Bia, because again, I know you're another one who would be approved and probably won't say nothing until you are forced to make a decision. We talk a lot, and to even know that you were even considering it is a bit of news to me, right? But I'm glad the decision was made. Once again, as you said, we're still going to serve children, no matter what capacity. We're still going to be the very best that we can be. And most of you who did this remotely the last 3 months or so did it just as good as you did, if not better, than when you were actually in the school building, because things stayed connected. Students stayed connected. Families stayed connected to the best of your ability. And I just know that you have nothing but love for the people that you are serving. But remember, again, serve yourself as well. Don't feel guilty about that. And as I say, I do have the experiences, and I do have at least the memories of the things that I saw happening in schools before this. And so I hope that one day we'll get back to those things. But if not, let's try to find creative ways to still have fun with the job, and to still find ways to connect to children and families, albeit a little bit different in terms of less physical contact. But let's do the best that we can to still enjoy the job. Anybody else?
Well, it's been really quiet on the Dame Dash front today. I'm a little shocked.
Well,
Because Big Brother Dame has really been a proponent of ensuring that we are protecting ourselves, whether or not we, can or cannot go into buildings. He has from the beginning said, I don't know how I would feel, what I would do if something happened to any one of you, especially since, as Mayor Patterson put it, we're feeling the pressure to reopen because of a myriad of issues that may be inside of the home or for somebody's job or to stimulate the economy. So, Dame, where you at?
well, yeah.
You're so quiet today. You good?
Well, really, what was just happening was I was just crying over a friend that died, and my friend Stan, and I haven't been able to deal with that. So I was, I cry over my friends. It hurts, and I consider all y'all my family and my friends, and I'm telling y'all, man, like, I don't want to cry over none of y'all.
If you want another amazing video with the one and only Dame Dash, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.